Greetings this holiday season, wherever you are in the world. On behalf of Great British Channel and myself, Liam Dale, we'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and an extremely Happy New Year.
Talk about an old English Christmas, and for the majority of people, images of snowy landscapes, chirruping robins, rosy-cheeked children, mounds of festive food, and a beautifully decorated Christmas tree will all spring effortlessly to mind. Folk slip easily into reminiscing about Christmases past, when snow was whiter, holly greener, turkey tastier, and presents much better than they could possibly be today. In fact, beyond compare. Tinged heavily with nostalgia, the major influence on such a view of Christmas belongs distinctly to the Victorian era, when the celebrations of the season took on a whole new character. The Queen, whose name graces this most significant period of history, ruled between 1837 and 1901, and she probably contributed a great deal more to our present-day Christmas celebrations than any other monarch. Looking at this stern picture of Queen Victoria as a grand old lady, it's hard to imagine her as a lively young woman who was just a mere slip of a girl who began her reign at the tender age of 18. Yet it was ironically her choice of husband that gave us our best-loved Christmas tradition, most definitely stamped with Victoria's royal seal of approval. Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha married Queen Victoria in 1840, and although his aristocratic credentials were impeccable, it was without question a love match. By the end of the year, their first child had been born, and the young royal family fascinated and intrigued the nation. More offspring were soon added to their number. In total, there were to be 9 children, and fashion followed wherever Queen Victoria and Prince Albert led. The youthful husband and father was devoted to his family, and like so many other parents before and since, he wanted to share with them his cultural heritage. This proved to be most significant at Christmas time, as the prince's German origins meant that he had always celebrated the festival rather differently to his English wife. But, just like the success of their marriage, the two sets of Christmas customs worked very well together within the royal household. When Prince Albert made a gift of a beautifully decorated Christmas tree to Queen Victoria, complete with tiny flickering lighted candles, he was continuing a tradition that had been much loved in Germany for as long as anyone could remember. More than 1,000 years previously, tree worship had been pretty much the norm, particularly with the ancient pagan German communities who lived amongst the country's magnificent forests. At first, mighty oaks were the honoured species, but as early missionaries attempted to introduce Christianity, the pine tree came to prominence. Being an elongated three-pointed triangle, it was said to represent the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, which kept the Christians happy, and, as the old pagans were not being asked to give up their tree-worshipping beliefs altogether, everyone was content to live and let live. The decorating of trees in winter certainly dates back to these ancient times, although it originally took place outdoors. As the leaves fell in winter, simple country folk believed that the spirits who usually lived in the trees and blessed their families with plentiful food supplies had run away. To entice the spirits to return, people would drape brightly coloured scraps of cloth and strings of brightly painted pebbles all over the bare branches. Naturally, when spring came and the leaves burst forth once more, an awful lot of congratulating went on, as the tree dressing had evidently had the desired effect. With the advent of slightly more scientific thinking, people soon realised the real reason for the returning leaves. But as everyone really liked dressing the bare trees, as the bright colours cheered them up during the dull winter months, they carried on regardless. Eventually, trees started to be brought into the house as Christmas developed into a fully fledged festival, and the practice became particularly popular in Germany. Our modern tinsel is a direct descendant of these ancient draperies, and it is as much appreciated today at Christmas time as it ever was. When putting up a Christmas tree, everyone knows that the first task is to get the lights going. These lanterns might have a Victorian feel to them, but fortunately, thanks to the miracle of electricity, they only need to be plugged in and switched on. When Prince Albert brought his Christmas tree into the royal palace, he certainly didn't have it quite so easy. Way back in the 16th century, another German, the devout reforming priest Martin Luther, was credited with being the first person to adorn a pine tree with lights. While meditating one night out in the forest, he looked up and saw the stars twinkling above the treetops. Inspired by God's majestic handiwork, he decided to recreate the moving moment for his congregation by attaching candles to the Christmas tree branches. Although this custom had such ancient beginnings, it didn't truly catch on until after Prince Albert produced his lighted Christmas tree for Queen Victoria. As ardent royal watchers copied this latest seasonal fashion, highly flammable trees, laden with, on occasion, up to 100 candles, became considerable fire hazards. It often fell to the youngest member of the family, or the most junior of the household servants, to sit next to the tree with a bucket of water whilst the candles were burning. Our modern dancing tree lights are lovely indeed, and absolutely synonymous with this very special time of the year. But there's something quite remarkable about the atmosphere created by the flickering Christmas tree candles. Switching off at the mains might be much safer, but what could compare with blowing the candles out, however many Christmases you might happen to have seen? The German traditions don't stop here. With lights and tinsel at the ready, the next thing any self-respecting tree decorator needs is a box of glittering baubles. This time we step back to old Bohemia, where the ancient craft of the glassblower was, and still is for that matter, world famous. After a frantically busy day at the workshop, refreshed only by liberal helpings of the local beer, a group of glassblowers decided to have a competition to see who could blow the biggest bubble. The winner was duly awarded even more beer, while the pretty twinkling spheres of glass were set aside. A few days later, one of the men's wives spotted them and decided that they'd make beautiful decorations, and she took the coloured baubles to the Christmas market. They were an instant success, quickly labelled spirit balls and advertised as superb at warding off the evil eye. Hung in the entrance to a house, the highly reflective surface would scare off even the most terrible of spirits, terrifying them with their own reflection. An inadvertent advertising campaign that a modern PR guru would be proud of meant that the glassblowers of Bohemia were kept busy each Christmas producing spirit balls. They were obviously an enterprising bunch, because when Christmas trees started to become popular, they miniaturized the process. The original balls were far too large to dangle on a branch, but the smaller versions that could reflect the glow of flickering Christmas lights soon covered every Christmas tree in the land, with a huge export market developing as well. Victorian Christmas tree baubles would most definitely be collector's items today, but our modern versions are pleasingly eye-catching. They are rarely made of glass, but that doesn't prevent us from enjoying the same glittering, twisting splendour that Queen Victoria and her children would have experienced all those years ago. Christmas trees were not, of course, the only form of foliage brought into the house for seasonal decoration. Long before Queen Victoria's time, the ancient custom of collecting holly, ivy and mistletoe was well established. But the Victorians did manage to come up with a few modifications of their own. This is mistletoe growing in the wild, an all-time Christmas favourite. Kissing under the mistletoe has surprisingly Christian origins, despite the rather naughtier implications of the Christmas kiss today. From the 14th century onwards, a model of the nativity scene was hung in the entrance of a house, surrounded by a hoop of green foliage, invariably including a healthy smattering of mistletoe. To greet your guests with a chaste kiss beneath this effigy was a sign of sacred Christmas love at this very special time of the year. As time passed, the nativity scene disappeared, and only the mistletoe remained, because people rather enjoyed their Christmas kissing. Without the restraint of the tradition's religious overtones, a perfectly respectable kiss on the cheek quickly gave way to far more amorous embraces. It's hardly surprising, therefore, that the morally upstanding Victorians felt it necessary to curb such wild indulgences. The white, waxy mistletoe berries became critical to the proceedings, as every time a kiss was planted beneath the strategically placed bunch, a berry needed to be removed. Once all the berries had gone, then, regrettably, the kissing had to cease. Although this did have something of a calming influence, folk became very careful about their selection of a mistletoe bough, and the bigger the bunch, the merrier the Christmas was likely to be. Holly also had a very special place in Victorian Christmas decorations. The shiny green leaves and bright red berries added a splash of colour to every household. For the townsfolk, the holly would arrive on a cart from the countryside, and everyone knew that Christmas was on its way. Some years the holly would be short on berries, but the Victorians had an ingenious answer to this. Children would be set to work with a box of dried peas and a pot of red paint, amusing themselves for hours, adding a splash of seasonal cheer to the holly. Another favourite Christmas decorating pastime developed during the Victorian era, especially for the children. The making of paper chains is a task that to this day falls to the younger members of the family, and a whole host of paper decorations started to become fashionable, along with Queen Victoria's beloved Christmas trees. Holly did not only appear inside the house, it had a significant role to play externally as well. Many a Victorian front door would be adorned with a holly wreath, but this traditional symbol of seasonal hospitality is actually of much earlier origin. It was the Romans who first started exchanging gifts of holly formed into wreaths to wish each other good health and happiness for the year ahead, when they celebrated their own midwinter festival. Today, the purchase of a holly wreath tends to be down to the householder, but it's said that for the holly to really work its magic, it needs to be presented as a gift. This lovely traditional wreath adorns the house where three very important Victorian ladies lived. Charlotte, Emily and Anne Bronte wrote their famous novels within the walls of Haworth Parsonage, and now a museum, it's presented exactly as it would have been in their day. Descriptions of Victorian Christmases in Yorkshire can be found in Charlotte's Jane Eyre and Emily's Wuthering Heights, and it's a season that's still celebrated here in traditional style. This classically cobbled high street is beautifully lit, and Christmas trees deck the lovely church of St Michael and All Angels, where the Reverend Patrick Bronte, the girl's father, had once presided. Visitors from all over the world regularly flock to Haworth's famous parsonage, and even in the cold winter chill, you'll find people enjoying the Christmas atmosphere, walking the narrow pathways of the little town, following in the footsteps of the much-loved literary Bronte sisters. When it came to writing Christmas letters, no doubt the Brontes were excellent correspondents, but not everyone was quite so enamoured with this time-consuming seasonal obligation. The sending and receiving of Christmas cards belongs very definitely to the Victorian era, because a very eminent gentleman of the period devised a cunning plan to avoid the chore of writing Christmas letters. Shortly after Queen Victoria's marriage to Prince Albert, Henry Cole, a children's book publisher, commissioned a card to be designed with seasonal good wishes printed upon it and sent copies to all his friends and family. He was a little disappointed because he thought his idea would quickly catch on commercially, but it took another great Victorian invention to set the Christmas card industry successfully on its way. The penny post cut the cost of using the postal system dramatically, and people who could not have afforded to use it for their Christmas messages were suddenly in a position to do so. Matters improved still further when, in 1870, a half-rate postal charge for cards came into being, and a new style of Christmas greeting followed. Here you see a selection of the type of seasonal postcards that developed to take advantage of the new postal rates, and each year a veritable deluge of them fell through letter boxes everywhere. Today, we send in excess of 1,000 million Christmas cards by post annually, and many of them are still decorated with very similar images to those found on these early examples. However, the Victorians certainly had one or two very strange notions of Christmas greetings, and thankfully some of the more bizarre images have not survived to appear on our modern cards, alongside festive Christmas trees and jolly old Santa Claus. Yet one Victorian image constantly adorns our best-loved Christmas cards, and it's none other than the beautiful red-breasted robin. There are many stories told of this little bird being present in the Bethlehem stable where Jesus was born. As the fire warming the stable started to go out, the robins hovered above the flames and flapped their wings to keep the blaze alive. Legend has it that by this brave action, the robin's chest was scalded red forevermore, even in the depths of the coldest winter. A Victorian connection exists, however, that gives a very different reason for the robin appearing on so many of our Christmas cards. When the new rates for postal services enticed folk to send each other ever-increasing quantities of Christmas greetings, the sight of the postman walking up your garden path was very pleasant indeed. The postal uniform of the day included a bright red waistcoat, and very quickly these welcome bringers of festive tidings earned the nickname Robins. Clever Victorian Christmas card designers painted robins carrying letters and even mail sacks, and people most definitely appreciated the joke, as the traditional use of the robin on Christmas cards became well and truly established. So, as our Christmas fire is blazing with a mantel shelf decked with Christmas cards, the clock is about to strike midnight as we move on to take a closer look at a rather more sinister seasonal tradition that has its roots very firmly planted in Victorian Britain. The telling of ghost stories on Christmas Eve had long been a popular tradition. Tales of graveyards at the dead of night where restless spirits walked would normally terrify susceptible listeners into a sleepless night, where every creaking sound meant impending doom. But folklore decreed that as the clock struck midnight as Christmas Day began, no ghost or evil presence was allowed to roam the earth until this most sacred of days was over. People could give full rein to their imaginative storytelling, without any fear of things going bump on this particular night of the year. Ancient as most of the ghost stories might have been, dabbling in witchcraft and black magic as well, it took a great Victorian author to really bring the Christmas ghost stories to prominence. Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol in 1843, and it was a huge success. His miserly hero, Ebenezer Scrooge, is visited on Christmas Eve by three ghostly spirits who teach him a lesson never to be forgotten. But why not listen to an extract from the great man's story, read in true Victorian Christmas style? Ebenezer Scrooge was a mean old miser who thought that Christmas was nothing but humbug. "If I could work my will," said Scrooge indignantly, "every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart, he should." This is not a good start to the Christmas festivities, particularly for Scrooge's poor clerk, Bob Cratchit, who has a wife and family he would like to be with on Christmas Day, He also has a crippled son, Tiny Tim, who is very ill and might not live to see another Christmas. When Scrooge is alone in his bed, he's visited by the ghost of his dead business partner, Jacob Marley, who is wrapped in chains, weighed down with his burdens. The chain he drew was clasped around his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. Marley had come to warn Scrooge that if he didn't change his ways, he would end up in the same predicament. 3 spirits then visit Scrooge, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, who show him what he must do to save himself and others around him. The first spirit appeared like a child, dressed in white, carrying fresh green holly. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish stature. "No, your past." The ghost takes Scrooge back to when he was a boy and reminds him of how he lost out on love. "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost, "that they are what they are. Do not blame me." "Remove me!" Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it." The second ghost is the spirit of Christmas present, who takes Scrooge to see Christmas at Bob Cratchit's house, where Tiny Tim is failing fast. He sat very close to his father's side, upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child, and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge, with an interest he had never felt before, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat," replied the ghost, "in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, kind spirit, say he'll be spared." A definite change of heart for Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, and by the time the ghost of Christmas yet to come arrived to take Scrooge to see his own grave, the old miser is resolved to change his ways. He immediately sets out to make amends to all, and especially to his faithful servant Bob Cratchit, hoping against hope that he will be in time to save Tiny Tim. "A Merry Christmas, Bob!" said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed.
God bless us, everyone.
Each year, the reading public awaited Mr. Dickens's Christmas ghost story with bated breath, and he never failed to please, even encouraging other authors to follow suit. A man of vision indeed, Charles Dickens did equally as much as Queen Victoria to influence the thinking of his contemporaries, and he certainly had an impact on the royal lady's view of the nation that she ruled. Far more important than his Christmas ghost stories were his magnificent novels, such as the socially challenging Nicholas Nickleby and David Copperfield. Here you see a first edition Nicholas Nickleby from 1839, which dramatically drew attention to the plight of the poverty-stricken working classes. His concerns for destitute children, a circumstance that he'd experienced personally during his childhood, were clearly voiced, and he was without doubt responsible for awakening a Victorian social conscience. Yet Dickens evidently died without fulfilling everything he'd intended, because they do say that his own shadowy ghost actually walks the streets of Rochester, the beloved town of his youth, to this very day, most notably at Christmas time. Perhaps there are more stories to be told. He never finished his mysterious last novel. Or maybe he just likes to come back and see how his thoughts regarding the festive season still influence our Christmases of today. Few people realise that we've Charles Dickens to thank for our preoccupation with white Christmases. The first 8 years of young Charles's life saw snow fall every Christmas, so when he started to write and his novels required seasonal imagery, he called upon his own memories of childhood to colour the scene. Consequently, it's now impossible to think of a Christmas without snow, fuelled by the wonderful nostalgia created within the works of Dickens. For a Christmas to be deemed white in England, the Meteorological Office must record snow falling in London. And since the days of Charles Dickens, such instances have been surprisingly rare. In the whole of the 20th century, only 2 Christmas days officially had snow, 1938 and 1970, with disappointingly poor odds of it being repeated any more frequently in the future. But at least we can always turn to the evocative seasonal writings of Charles Dickens to help the imagination. And of course, his great literary legacy adds considerably more than a dusting of white powdery snow to our modern-day perception of Christmas. After all, when it came to Christmas gatherings, seasonal feasting, balls, dances and party games, as a writer, Charles Dickens was the undisputed master. At the centre of any Christmas table, the golden, steaming roasted bird was as important in Dickens's time as it is today. He often wrote about the Christmas goose, but because of the preferences of Queen Victoria, the turkey would already have been a more likely choice. Up until her defection, the royal Christmas dinner had always consisted of roasted swan, and as we've already heard, the Queen was very good at setting new trends. Soon turkey was the only fashionable Christmas poultry to serve for rich and poor alike, and this is a much-loved tradition that continues gracing our Christmas tables to this very day. With turkey as a main course, what could be more customary to serve as a dessert than the Christmas pudding? However, this seasonal delicacy has a very ancient pedigree, much older than you might suppose when reading Charles Dickens's beautifully written words extolling the virtues of Christmas pudding. It's hard to believe that this rich, dark, heavily fruited culinary concoction actually started life as a lumpy old bowl of porridge. As unappetizing as this may sound, or look for that matter, to the ancient Celts it was literally the ambrosia of the gods, because it was kept bubbling over the fire and frequently stirred as a form of worship. With the passage of time, fruits and meat were added to the pot, and very gradually the Christmas pudding that we know and love today started to emerge. The fruit was quite sufficient to add plenty of flavour, and the meat was eventually omitted, although suet is still a mainstay of most Christmas puddings. Vegetarian alternatives can be used. It'll certainly taste just as good, but you won't ever get the glossy shine that you see here. However, the sacred stirring ceremony has made its way into present-day custom. Stir-up Sunday, just weeks before Christmas, is when the puddings are traditionally made, and every member of the family gets to have a good stir, making a wish as they go. But whatever you do, don't ever stir a Christmas pudding anti-clockwise, or widdershins, as it's known in Old English, because this'll bring bad luck for the year ahead. It's customary to hide small coins in Christmas puddings, and the finder is then assured future prosperity, but it's a scaled-down version of this once far more clairvoyant tradition. Should a ring tumble out onto your plate, then you could look forward to an imminent marriage, and for a Victorian lady, this meant security and respectability. However, if a little silver thimble was all that materialised in your portion of the pudding, then no such good luck was on its way. A thimble indicated hard work and spinsterhood, something to be avoided at all cost, making coins and rings much the preferred omens. The Christmas cake is very similar to the pudding in terms of ingredients, and as often as not, those who have indulged in the lunchtime flaming pudding can't face the Christmas cake at tea time. Yet tradition never dictated the consumption of both fruity treats on the same day, and in this respect, Queen Victoria has an awful lot to answer for. By rights, the Christmas cake belonged to the old Twelfth Night celebrations that before Queen Victoria's time used to be the liveliest of occasions. It was the last day of Christmas, and before all the decorations were taken down, great parties would be held to bid a fond farewell to the festive season. A huge fruit cake was baked, ready for the arrival of all the guests, and it was cut in half with a bean hidden in each side. The men divided their half between themselves, and the women likewise, and whoever found a bean in their slice of cake was crowned king or queen of the festivities. Dancing and drinking went on well into the night, and fancy dress was often required, making the party go with a real swing. But for Queen Victoria's sense of propriety, this was all too wild and reckless. The good lady was distinctly unamused, and always ready to improve the moral fibre of her subjects, she banned Twelfth Night celebrations altogether. Today, the 6th of January, is just simply the day to put all the Christmas decorations away, and it's rather an anticlimax. Seeing out Christmas with an almighty 12th night party bang must have been a far more satisfactory way of doing things. Yet folk were reluctant to give up everything to do with 12th night, and the cake was extremely popular. Rather than lose it, a layer of golden marzipan and snowy white icing was added to the cake, and it was transferred to Christmas proper, complete with snowmen, Santa Claus, reindeer and fir trees. Queen Victoria might have put a damper on 12th night, but at least she didn't attempt to ban Christmas outright, as one of her less than royal predecessors had done. Oliver Cromwell, with his unwavering Puritan values, made regulations to outlaw the keeping of Christmas, much to the horror of most of the population of Great Britain. Rioting crowds marched in protest, but Cromwell was determined to make a stand. Fortunately, he didn't stay around for long, historically speaking, but the humble mince pie, which is so much a part of our modern-day Christmas festivities, was almost lost in Cromwell's anti-Christmas legislation. The Christmas pie was a wonderful creation, full of different kinds of minced meats and fruits, often baked in the shape of a manger to commemorate Christ's nativity. To complete this culinary masterpiece, a pastry model of the baby Jesus was added to the top, which, for the pious Oliver Cromwell, was sacrilegious in the extreme. He immediately outlawed making or consuming Christmas pie, ironically having been made to look a fool over his laws concerning Christmas pudding. Cromwell decreed that no Christmas puddings were to be made in Britain, omitting the clause about eating them. His rebellious subjects simply sent orders to France for pre-cooked puddings and carried on their festive consumption beyond the reach of the law. However, a few simple modifications to the Christmas pie circumnavigated Cromwell's dictates very neatly. Instead of being shaped like a crib, they were made round. Baby Jesus was abandoned altogether, and a change of name to mince pie, because of the minced meat contained within, saw the problem sorted. After Cromwell's departure and King Charles II's restoration to the British throne, Christmas returned to its former joyful self. But the mince pie never reverted back to its old style, and eventually the meat was omitted and the fruit was left to stand alone. It's been claimed that if you make a wish when you bite into your first mince pie as Christmas approaches, it'll come true. But make sure you don't refuse the first mince pie that you're offered, as this would bring bad luck for the year ahead. Tradition also suggests that a mince pie eaten on each of the 12 days of Christmas will bring great good fortune. However, this festive feasting must take place in 12 different houses, and as folk are generally offered a glass of sherry alongside their mince pies, it's not too difficult to work out why this custom became so popular, ensuring a very Merry Christmas for one and all. If you have a sweet tooth when it comes to festive food, watch out for the Christmas Yule log, a chocolate-covered concoction that has a distinctly French connection. Right across ancient Europe, the burning of the Yule log throughout the 12 days of Christmas was one of the most important customs of the season, bringing good fortune to the household for the coming year. But with the advent of the industrial 19th century, much of the once rural population moved to the rapidly growing towns and cities. Finding a huge Yule log to burn was, needless to say, rather tricky, not to mention the dangers of such a fire in the confined spaces of urban housing. The French confectioners soon came up with the perfect solution, creating the gooey delight that you see before you, and like all good Christmas ideas, it quickly spread worldwide. Today, a Yule log is very simple to create, with Swiss roll and chocolate icing. But the effect is every bit as seasonal as those ancient fires that once burnt in the hearth of every home. Christmas is the one time of the year that we still indulge in food and feasting on the grand scale of the Victorians. Healthy eating is forgotten, for Christmas Day at the very least. But as we groan with overindulgence and indigestion, we are at least able to doze lazily on a comfy sofa in front of the television. Yet there was no such lull in the proceedings for the Victorians, because as soon as the great Christmas meal had been cleared away, it was time for the fun and games to begin. A lot of the games that the Victorians would have played have stayed in use down through the years. Blind Man's Buff is always popular, more so perhaps these days at birthday parties, with Spin the Bottle and Postman's Knock proving to be great favourites with those of a more amorous disposition any time of the year. A good game of charades was also guaranteed to get the party going, with even the most respectable Victorians unbending to mime and gesticulation with theatrical flourish. Yet one of the best-loved Victorian Christmas games has now disappeared almost without trace. When you discover what was actually involved, you'll understand why. Snapdragon required a large bowl filled with dried fruit and a lot of space. After an extremely liberal dosing with brandy, the fruit was set alight. In a darkened room, the blue flickering flames were nothing short of mesmerising, as each person gathered around would take it in turns to grab a handful of the burning fruit and eat it. Anecdotes of Snapdragon describe it as being almost as much fun to watch as it was to play, with people jumping around with handfuls and mouthfuls of sweet, flaming fruit. An alternative version of the game involved treating apples in exactly the same way, resulting in a considerable blaze. But even the Victorians regarded this one as being a rather dangerous pastime. It has to be said, however, having recreated Snapdragon for this programme, the fruit does taste absolutely delicious if you have the nerve to try it. definitely not to be attempted in a confined space, and a fire extinguisher on standby is an absolute must. For most Victorian families, a piano in the front parlour was a vital piece of furniture, and at Christmas time it really came into its own. No family gathering was complete without a sing-song around the piano, and Christmas carols certainly played their part. Also, no Victorian Christmas would be worthy of the name without at least one visit from the carol singers. Many people complain that Christmas today has lost much of its religious significance, particularly when lively Christmas party songs replace the more traditional carols. But the origin of the Christmas carol is far from being on the higher spiritual plane that you might imagine. Dating back to the 13th century, English Christmas carols were sung as part of a circular dance, and the proceedings were very lively indeed. Theatricals soon accompanied the dancing and singing in churches, great and small throughout the land, and it didn't take long for the clerical hierarchy to intervene. Christmas carols were banned from churches altogether, and this is how the tradition of carol singers travelling from house to house began. Banished from churches, the carol singers had to go somewhere, because they certainly didn't want the custom to die. With the passage of time, things have now come full circle, and carols are once again sung most reverently in churches as an integral part of traditional worship. Minus, of course, the dancing and play acting that once gave the Christmas carol such a bad name. With huge quantities of food consumed, games played sociably with friends and relations, and a rousing Christmas sing-song around the family piano, a Victorian Christmas could be considered a success indeed. Yet there were always new ideas being developed to make the seasonal festivities go off, quite literally, with an even bigger bang. Here you see a traditional Christmas cracker, a great favourite at any celebration, invented by a Victorian confectioner in the early 1840s. Tom Smith, a name that is still synonymous with Christmas crackers today, drew on different cultural experiences to come up with his great idea. On a visit to Paris, he encountered the bonbon, a sugared sweet wrapped in a brightly coloured twist of paper. At this time, English sweets never had wrappings and were sold loose from jars in the confectioner's shop. So, when Tom Smith returned home, he set about his cracker making, enclosing a sweet in paper with twisted ends. He'd also been influenced by Chinese fortune cookies with their simple messages on slips of paper, and he included a motto in every cracker. Tom Smith's Christmas crackers were a great success, but he still felt that there was something lacking. On a winter's evening, as he sat by his fireside, a cracking, spitting log inspired him further. What if he could make his crackers bang like the log when they were pulled? The extra surprise element was just what his invention needed, and they've remained popular to this day, with no sign of people ever tiring of them. Sweets have been phased out and replaced with small gifts, and the mottos are more likely to be very corny jokes or interesting facts. Another addition to the cracker has been brightly coloured paper hats shaped like crowns. These are a throwback to the old Twelfth Night celebrations and the great fruitcake discussed a little earlier. When the king and queen had been chosen, they'd put on a crown made of paper, making them feel very special for the evening. And that's basically still the idea behind these paper hats today. Even the sternest elderly relation will seem far more mellowed, crowned with a cracker paper hat, joining in the fun around the Christmas dinner table. If you ask any child today what their favourite part of Christmas is, you can be pretty sure that they'll reply, "The presents!" And for Victorian children, the gifts of the season would have been equally important. However, the giving of presents at Christmas time dates back long before the Victorian era, even predating the birth of Christ. For the ancient Britons, winter was a hard time, and survival was dependent upon storing enough food away during the summer months to see them through to the following spring. Celebrating a midwinter festival with a feast was considered essential to encourage plentiful supplies for the year ahead, and the exchange of edible gifts was very much a part of this ritual. To this day, gifts of food and drink are still very traditional and just as gratefully received as ever. The nativity scene that's on display here commemorates perhaps the best ever known presentation of gifts. The three wise men travelled from a far-off land to bring gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh to the Bethlehem stable where Jesus was born. Even the humble shepherds brought presents of baby lambs to the Christ child in celebration of his birth. Nativity scenes were certainly popular in English churches in the Middle Ages, but it was a tradition that would have been lost had it not been for a Victorian revival. With the Queen's German connections, beautifully crafted cribs were imported from Germany, where nativity scenes had always taken pride of place amongst the Christmas decorations. It was a trend that Queen Victoria would have heartily approved of, as not only honouring her beloved husband's homeland, but it also reminded her loyal subjects of a rather more spiritual Christmas message. The giving of gifts is very closely associated with Christmas morning, but the day after, known traditionally as Boxing Day, is named for a very specific type of Christmas present. Centuries back, before it had been discovered that the world was round, sailing across the sea was a terrifying business indeed. Conditions could be hazardous, and matters were made much worse because the sailors believed that the world was flat, and if they reached the edge, they'd fall off into oblivion. Before embarkation, a priest would have blessed a special box that was placed aboard the ship to help in times of trouble when the end of the world seemed moments away. When the men feared for their lives, they'd put a coin or trinket in the box and offer up a prayer for their salvation. Should the prayers be answered and the ship return home safely, the box was returned to the priest, who would keep it in the church until Christmas Day. All the boxes that had been collected through the year were opened, and the following day the money would be distributed to the poor. The tradition continued, with alms boxes being put out in churches on Christmas Day for the worshippers to make a charitable donation. Again, the day after Christmas, the money was shared out amongst the needy, and Boxing Day soon received its name. Although this was truly a Christian act insofar as those who were rich were giving to the poor, Oliver Cromwell's banning of Christmas virtually wiped out this tradition when his puritanical government prevented churches from opening on Christmas Day. If there was no congregation, there was no collection, and consequently, no money for the poor. However, the worthy poor decided to take matters into their own hands. Young apprentices who were particularly badly paid made their own collecting boxes, and in the run-up to Christmas, they'd ask their employers and customers to give a donation. Boxing Day continued to be the customary occasion for the boxes to be smashed open and the money shared out. To this day, it's still traditional for paper boys and girls to receive a Christmas box from their customers, which is why even the surliest of youths will deliver the newspapers with a smile and a friendly wave in the weeks before Christmas, in the hope of a generous festive bonus. Yet no matter how customary and tangible all of this gift-giving might be, there's one very important character who's so far been noticeable by his absence. Father Christmas, Santa Claus, or Saint Nicholas, whatever you choose to call him, was by Victorian times already quite well established as a Christmas gift-giving legend, and it's fascinating to track the kindly old chap's development. The very first Father Christmas to appear in Britain came courtesy of the Vikings, way back in ancient times. One man was selected from each settlement, and he was dressed up in furs and a seasonal crown of evergreens. He would then visit all of his neighbours, who would make him as welcome as possible, because it was believed that by bestowing gifts upon this representation of winter, the onset of spring would be accelerated. Needless to say, plied with food and drink everywhere he stopped, old Father Christmas was a jolly fellow indeed, far more preoccupied with receiving than he was with giving. But far across the world, a very different Christmas character was developing in the form of Saint Nicholas, the very kind and gentle Bishop of Myra. Saint Nicholas was born in the little town of Patara, not far from Myra, in Turkey in 280 AD. Nicholas was a wealthy young man, through very sad circumstances, as both his parents had died, leaving him all of their money. They'd been good Christian folk who taught their son to share whatever he had with those less fortunate than himself, and as a tribute to his parents' memory, Nicholas decided to use his wealth for the good of his fellow man. The most famous story about St. Nicholas tells of the plight of three sisters who lived nearby. Their father was old and ill, and being poverty-stricken, he was unable to offer a dowry to enable the girls to marry, with the prospect of disastrous consequences. Not only did they face destitution, but also it was likely that they'd be forced into a life of prostitution. At the dead of night, Nicholas made his way to their home in secret, carrying a bag of gold. The house was in a terrible state of disrepair, with broken windows, and Nicholas was able to throw in the gold without being noticed. Next morning, there was great rejoicing, and the eldest daughter was able to marry, but no one had any idea who their generous benefactor had been. Some days later, Nicholas repeated his good deed, and the second daughter was saved from what was then considered to be a fate worse than death. However, unbeknown to Nicholas, there'd been sufficient money to repair the broken windows, and when he returned with a bag of gold to save the youngest daughter, he was unable to throw his gift into the house as he'd done before. Nicholas spotted the chimney and cast the bag of gold high into the night sky, and miraculously it actually fell down the chimney. That evening, the girls had washed their stockings and had hung them up by the fireplace to dry. Can you imagine the delight of the youngest daughter when she found a bag of gold in her stocking? The family's fortunes had been turned around completely by the good deeds of St. Nicholas, and one of our best-loved Christmas traditions had begun. To this day, we still hang out stockings on Christmas Eve in the hope that by the morning they'll have been filled with presents and, on occasion, a bag of gold coins, although only of the chocolate variety, might have been included amongst the brightly wrapped gifts. As the years passed, word of the charitable work of Nicholas got out, despite his efforts to modestly remain anonymous. He was appointed Bishop of Myra and continued to help those in need, most notably the young and the vulnerable, for the rest of his life. Nicholas died in 345 AD and was buried where he'd served as a bishop in Myra. Within a matter of years, Nicholas had been made a saint, and the entire world heard about his kindness to the poor and needy. As a result, when his homeland was threatened by a terrible war, the body of St. Nicholas was removed from Myra and transported to a special tomb at Bari in Italy for safekeeping, where you can still visit his final resting place today. In England, there are at least 400 churches named after St. Nicholas, the majority dating back to Norman times, and it's possible that you might actually have visited one. Here you see the very famous church of St. Nicholas at Steventon in Hampshire, where the famous authoress Jane Austen worshipped as a child and young woman, and there are plenty of special churches of St. Nicholas to discover. This ruined chapel, dedicated to the popular saint, can be found in the southeast of Ireland, and rumour has it that the body of Nicholas was actually brought here rather than taken to Italy all those years ago. Now, the thought of good St. Nicholas being buried in an Irish field might seem just a little far-fetched. But when you take a closer look at the grave in question, it's not as crazy as it sounds. This is undoubtedly the burial site of a very significant clerical personage from the time of the Crusades, and although there's no proof that the mortal remains of St. Nicholas lie beneath this beautiful rolling Irish countryside, there's no proof to the contrary either. The feast day of St. Nicholas falls before Christmas, on the 6th of December each year. And to see this day celebrated in traditional style, you need to travel to Holland, where this festival is always eagerly awaited. Late in November, St. Nicholas and his faithful companion Black Peter arrive by boat in Amsterdam. Sinterklaas, as the Dutch call the saint, rides a white horse and prepares for a journey across the land on the eve of St. Nicholas's Day. Children put out their shoes filled with carrots for Sinterklaas's white horse, which by morning should have been replaced with sweets and gifts. However, they do need to have behaved themselves all year long to receive such goodies, because if they haven't, Black Peter will only leave them birch twigs as a threatening reminder to mend their ways by the next year. At this point, it's quite hard to see how the godly Sinterklaas could possibly have become amalgamated with the old pagan Father Christmas of Viking origin. But by the 17th century, travel was beginning to make the world a significantly smaller place. Through the 1600s, many Dutch people emigrated to America, and naturally they took their traditional tales of Sinterklaas with them. He soon became accepted as a fundamental part of cosmopolitan American culture, with just a few minor modifications. To simplify matters, the visit of Sinterklaas was moved to Christmas Eve, and as his name was only pronounceable by those of Dutch ancestry, it didn't take long for him to be renamed Santa Claus, which was much easier for everyone to say. Rather than abandoning St. Nicholas Day altogether, the 6th of December was designated for writing letters to Santa Claus, so that children could let him know what they really wanted for Christmas. Gradually, the slim, elegant St. Nicholas in stately bishop's robes became stouter, rounder, and altogether more a figure of fun. The chastisement of bad children was completely forgotten, and Black Peter found that he'd been made redundant. By the time Victoria came to the British throne, travel across the Atlantic was a viable option. Steamships such as Isambard Kingdom Brunel's SS Great Britain opened up the cultural exchange between the two nations, and the jolly American Santa Claus carrying a sack of gifts for children everywhere proved to be a very popular export. Throughout the Victorian era, Father Christmas, St. Nicholas and Santa Claus all became rolled into one, although he still wasn't quite the lovable gift bringer that we're used to today. Take a look at this extraordinary selection of early Christmas cards depicting Santa Claus, and you might even find it difficult to recognise him. Dressed in all sorts of strange clothing, blue, brown, green and white Father Christmases all appear, and one or two of them are very sinister looking indeed. The jolly, round-bellied, red-coated, white-bearded Santa Claus, familiar worldwide today, actually owes much of his public persona to an advertising campaign of the 1930s. Coca-Cola launched a campaign for Christmas 1931 that featured Santa Claus dressed from head to toe in their signature red and white colours. The heartwarming old fellow struck a chord with families everywhere, and he became the accepted face of Santa Claus from this time onwards. Other drinks companies, as you see from this Guinness poster, soon discovered the value of Christmas advertising, and to this day Santa Claus is used to endorse an incredible range of products at this most seasonal time of the year. When Queen Victoria was a tiny 3-year-old girl, an American professor of Greek literature wrote a light-hearted Christmas poem for his children that added an extra dimension to the legend of Santa Claus. When Clement Moore wrote A Visit from St. Nicholas, often better known as The Night Before Christmas, he created a homeland for Santa Claus amongst the snowy wastes of Lapland, and a mode of transportation that would inspire the imaginations of generations to come. Here you see reindeer in their natural habitat, and for Moore there was no better way for Santa Claus to travel than by sleigh and a team of 8 flying magical reindeer. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donder and Blitzen were responsible for getting Santa Claus all around the world on Christmas Eve, and every child, from the publication of this poem onwards, has listened for the sound of sleigh bells as they fall asleep on the most special night of the year. For the Victorians, it would have been impossible to think of travelling to the Arctic Circle to visit Santa Claus in his own home. But for a growing number of fortunate youngsters today, it's an extra special Christmas treat. This illustrates perfectly how a concept popularised during the Victorian era can have been built upon and improved beyond all recognition. As our Victorian Christmas draws to a close, it would be impossible to let this programme finish without taking a look at New Year celebrations. And of course, this means travelling north of the border to Scotland. If you visit Edinburgh, you'll find the house of John Knox, the great reforming priest who worked tirelessly to bring a sense of religious sobriety to this nation. Under his guidance, Christmas Day was set aside purely for devotional purposes, and the lively celebrations, so beloved of the Scots, were transferred to New Year, or Hogmanay as it's better known. To this day, the feasting, dancing, drinking and singing is as noisy as ever, and on the stroke of midnight people pour out onto the streets to make as much noise as possible, a custom that was traditionally to scare off the evil spirits lurking at the turn of the year. Here you see Princes Street, in the long shadow of Edinburgh Castle, where thousands of revellers from all over the world gather to see out the old year and ring in the new, in true Scottish style. The national drink is undoubtedly whisky. That New Year it is consumed in vast quantities. This is the Glenfiddich distillery at the heart of Speyside, and it makes a perfect tipple for the season. At Hogmanay, Scottish householders need to ensure that they've sufficient supplies of whisky to quench the thirst of the first footers who come to call. This custom is rather sexist, as good fortune will only come to your house if a dark-haired young man is the first to cross your threshold after the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve. A female first footer will only bring bad luck, but perhaps this was just a convenient excuse for the men to keep all the whiskey for themselves. If fortune smiles and you get a male first footer, he'll bring gifts of coal and bread to wish you a warm house and plenty to eat for the coming year. In return, he'll receive generous measures of whisky for his trouble, because to refuse a first footer a wee dram would spell disaster for the entire household. Queen Victoria played a significant role in the export of Scottish New Year customs south of Hadrian's Wall, which is rather ironic when you consider the lengths she went to in order to abolish the great Twelfth Night parties. Yet for Queen Victoria, Scotland was a place of great escape from the onerous duties of royal life, and we do know that she wasn't adverse to a tot of whisky from time to time herself. The countryside was also of great solace to her, particularly after the death of her beloved Prince Albert, and her beautiful castle at Balmoral is still a favourite royal retreat to this very day. Throughout the course of this programme, it's become increasingly evident that Queen Victoria influenced the thinking of her subjects considerably, and this is equally true of the public perception of Scotland. Thanks to her, fearing the wild Scots was a thing of the past, and her love of all things Scottish saw many of the country's customs and traditions embraced the length and breadth of her glorious empire. There's no denying the influence of the Victorians on our modern-day Christmas and New Year celebrations. From Queen Victoria and Prince Albert's Christmas trees, right through to the evocative seasonal writings of Charles Dickens, the grateful nation was delighted by the colourful growth of the Christmas festival. At a time of great social change, when hardship was often rife as a result of the Industrial Revolution, a Victorian Christmas did at the very least offer a few days' respite and a message of hope. Queen Victoria died almost with the birth of the 20th century in January 1901. And since then, many other people of note have added their own unique touches to the way we celebrate Christmas. But no expression of the season's greetings will ever compare with wishes for a very happy Victorian Christmas. And hopefully, after enjoying this truly nostalgic programme, you'll now know exactly why. If there's one good thing about the dark and dismal onset of winter, it's the fact that Christmas is on its way. As the 1st of December approaches, even the grown-ups have to admit that Christmas is coming, and everyone can begin the preparations for the very best day of the whole year. The countdown to December the 25th is almost as much fun the whole world over as the celebration of Christmas itself. But have you ever wondered why this particular date on the calendar is so important? As we look at this traditional nativity scene with Mary, Joseph and baby Jesus in the manger, the obvious answer is that it's Jesus' birthday, though this isn't strictly the case. No one knows for sure the actual date, so a very long time ago, all the people of the Christian religion got together and agreed on this special day for Christmas. But there'd been celebrations at this time of the year long before anyone had ever heard about the events that took place in a Bethlehem stable. The Midwinter Festival was how folk from ages past cheered themselves up in the dark winter months. Can you imagine life without electricity? No television seems a horrible prospect. But way back then, nobody even had light or heating, except for a flickering candle and a burning fire. Everybody used to look forward to the longer days of spring, and halfway through the winter they'd bring in evergreen branches from outside and join together with the neighbours to have a party. People believed that this would encourage the winter to turn to spring all the sooner, bringing prosperity to the house and all who lived in it. Food was also very important, because nothing grew in the winter and people had to eat what they'd stored away. It was all a bit boring, and they looked forward to fresh supplies when the weather got better, so creating great winter feasts out of what they had certainly helped to pass the time pleasantly and make meals a bit more tasty. Lots of our Christmas customs date back to these early festivals, and as you're about to find out, they're still popular to this very day. Yet the most important Christmas character of them all hasn't even been mentioned. Father Christmas, Santa Claus, or Saint Nicholas, call him whatever you like, is the one person we all wait for on Christmas Eve. This old, cheery, white-bearded chap, carrying a sack of presents for good children everywhere, is anticipated with delight each year. And on Christmas morning, the brightly coloured gifts under the tree, or stuffed bulging stockings at the foot of the bed, let us know that the great man has visited. With no time to waste, there are lots of things that need to be done before Father Christmas arrives, and perhaps this year we can discover a little bit more about him. Instead of waiting for Santa Claus to come to us, we're going off on a magical, mystical journey to find him in his snowy homeland, where he works all year long for just one very special night. So, where do we begin? Well, Advent calendars are a very good place to start. Opening the first box on the very first day of December puts everyone in a very happy mood, especially if a chocolate treat is hidden behind the doors. But this is a very new addition to Advent calendars, which celebrate all the days of December leading up to Christmas Eve. It always used to be that the last picture showed Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus. But you never know what it's going to be these days, which makes it all the more interesting. If an Advent calendar is a good way of counting down to Christmas, then making this programme into an Advent calendar on your television would be really good fun. Our first picture has been the Advent calendar itself, getting us ready to start the preparations for Christmas. But our second picture shows something that we all know and love, to send and to receive. What can be nicer than getting up on a December morning to find the postman has delivered a pile of Christmas cards to your door? Even the stamps are likely to have Christmas pictures on them, making the envelopes even more inviting. You really do know that Christmas is on the way when the cards start to arrive, and there are all sorts of pictures to look out for. Santa Claus is very popular, so are his reindeer. Holly is nice, and Christmas bells, and some cards even have funny jokes on them. People have been sending Christmas cards to each other for more than 150 years now, so let's have a look at the type of cards that they used to send. Some of them seem a bit strange to us today, and the cards with Father Christmas on look nothing like the jolly ones we're used to. A lot of them are actually postcards with messages written on the back, and the actual cards that were sent in envelopes are very small indeed. The man who invented the Christmas card was a very clever chap who didn't like writing letters very much, and in his day you were expected to write letters to all your friends and relations at Christmas. So he got an artist to paint him a picture, added a message which said, "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you," and then he printed lots of copies. It took a while for the idea to catch on commercially, but the man never had to write a Christmas letter again. In Britain today, more than 1,000 million Christmas cards are sent through the month of December, keeping all the postmen and women very busy. The third image to pop up on our Advent calendar is a very familiar little bird, the robin. And of all the birds in Britain, it's the one most associated with Christmas. You'll see robins on many Christmas cards, especially the early ones, because the postmen of the day used to wear red waistcoats, and so they got the nickname robins. Of course, as they were the people responsible for bringing the Christmas post, pictures of robins, sometimes even carrying post bags, started to appear on cards. But if we take a closer look at the robin, there are lots of other reasons for him being so popular at Christmas time. Now, Robin Redbreast, as he's often fondly known, is a friendly little bird, and particularly in the winter months when food gets difficult to find, he'll come very close to people to try and find something to eat. Robins are also very inquisitive, so you're far more likely to see them in the garden than the shyer birds that keep away from us. As well as being a bird that everyone will see at Christmas time, there are quite a few old stories that are told about robins. Some people say that there were robins in the stable where Jesus was born, and because of it being cold, Joseph went out to gather more wood for the fire. It took him a long time, and it seemed as if the fire was going to go out before he got back. Mary did her best to keep the fire alight, but it was hopeless until the little birds realised what was happening. They flew down and started to flap their wings above the fire to stop it dying, just long enough for Joseph to return. But the flames from the fire turned their little chests red, and ever since the robin has always been famous for being so brightly coloured. Red is often associated with fire and flames, and there are much older legends about the robin. Ancient tribes believed that the robin was the fire bringer, and so long as you saw these little birds in the middle of winter, there would be fire for heat and light through the long dark nights. Early man was very superstitious about the robin, and anybody who killed or injured one was in very big trouble. Even today, it's considered bad luck if anything unfortunate happens to a robin, and people try extremely hard to look after them. So next time you see a robin on a Christmas card or out in the garden, just remember what a very special little bird he really is. By the time the 4th of December arrives, everyone is starting to think about Christmas decorations, and our next picture shows one of the best loved decorations of them all. The green spiky leaves and red berries of holly appear as often on Christmas cards as robins do, and this truly beautiful evergreen is one of the most traditional of our modern-day decorations. Bringing holly into the house in the depths of winter dates back to Roman times, signifying good health for the year ahead. If you were given a gift of holly, it was intended as a good wish for your future. Today, Christmas wreaths of holly hung cheerfully on the door are a common sight wherever you go, and these inviting decorations actually originate from this ancient custom. Although most people now buy their own holly wreath for it really to work and bring health and happiness to the household, it, by rights, should have been given to you as a present. With the passage of time, a lot of people no longer bring holly inside the house at Christmas time, preferring to use paper decorations instead. There are all sorts of brightly coloured garlands to dangle from the ceiling, and paper chains are great fun to make, as well as to drape around the room. Even if you don't manage to get holly for Christmas, the fifth picture that's on our Advent calendar shows a plant that you most definitely will see wherever you go visiting at this time of the year. This is mistletoe, growing in the wild, and you can see great bunches of it living on these trees. And of all the plants, it is the one that is best known at Christmas time. It's traditional for people to kiss under the mistletoe as a very special way of greeting each other at Christmas. And when this was first introduced, a little peck on the cheek was as far as matters were allowed to go. But as people got used to the idea, they wanted to do more and more kissing under the mistletoe, and things got a bit out of control. Then a new custom was brought in, which meant that each time someone had a kiss, one of the white berries had to be removed from the mistletoe above their heads. When all the berries had gone, no more kissing. This is why people today are very careful about choosing the mistletoe to hang up in their houses as a kissing bough, picking out the branches with as many berries as they can possibly find. It's one sure way to make certain of having a very, very happy Christmas. December the 6th is a very important day on our Advent calendar because it's the festival of St. Nicholas. A lot of people still call Father Christmas St. Nicholas, and many of our Christmas traditions come from the story of this kind, gentle, generous man who was especially fond of children. St. Nicholas was born in a country called Turkey long, long ago. When he was a young man, he became very rich, and instead of spending it on himself, he used the money to help others in need. There was a family in his neighbourhood who were terribly poor, and the 3 daughters couldn't find husbands to look after them because they had no money, and their old father was too weak to work any longer. Their house was falling to pieces, and the windows had no glass. So one night, Nicholas took a bag of money and threw it in through the draughty opening. Next day, the father was very relieved, as one daughter could get married, but he had no idea who'd been so kind. But Nicholas knew he'd not yet done enough, so he went back the next night and threw another bag of money into the house, again without being seen. It was a miracle for the family, and the second daughter could marry as well. This only left one girl to be taken care of, so Nicholas went back again, but the windows had by this time been mended, and he couldn't throw the money in as he had done before. Nicholas tossed the bag of gold high into the air so it would fall down the chimney. Hung up by the mantelpiece were the girls' stockings, drying by the warmth of the fire. The money landed in a stocking, and you can imagine her surprise when she found it the next morning. This is just one of the many stories told about St. Nicholas, who always did good deeds in secret, and why it's traditional to hang up Christmas stockings. If you're very lucky, you might even find a bag of shining coins in your stocking on Christmas morning, but I don't expect you'll mind that they're made of chocolate. For children who live in Holland, St. Nicholas, or Sinterklaas as they call him, will visit them on the 6th of December with his helper, Black Peter. The children put out their shoes, filled with carrots for Sinterklaas's horse, and if they've been very good, by the morning the carrots will have gone and been replaced by sweets and presents. But if they've been naughty, Black Peter will leave a birch stick as a warning instead. Some people think that the feast of St. Nicholas is a very good day on which to write letters to Father Christmas to tell him the list of presents that they'd like. This gives him just the right amount of time to make sure that everybody gets at least one of the things that they've asked for when they wake up on Christmas morning. After the lovely story of St. Nicholas, our next Advent picture is a beautiful Christmas fireplace, complete with seasonal cards and colourful stockings. But it's a very different Christmas tradition we're looking at here, which began long before St. Nicholas showed such kindness to the poor. Now, if you look in the baker's shop this time of the year, one of the nicest things you can find to eat is a Christmas log made of chocolate Swiss roll and gooey icing. This represents the ancient Yule log that was once a really important part of the festivities. On Christmas Eve, folk would set off in search of a huge log that would burn in the fireplace until the holiday came to an end 12 days later. It would be lit with a piece of last year's Yule log, which people kept very safe with the leftover ashes. By continuing this tradition, not only might the family be warm throughout Christmas, but also they'd be protected from evil spirits all year long. Few people have real fires to sit by these days, but a chocolate Yule log is a very tasty way to celebrate this charming Christmas custom, and great fun to make, even with the youngest members of the family able to join in. As the 8th of December dawns, it's time to think about one of the most important Christmas tasks of them all. We need a Christmas tree, and for most families it'll take pride of place in the house throughout the celebrations. Whether you choose a sparkling silver imitation tree or a natural pine one that'll make your whole house smell lovely, the Christmas tree will put everybody into the Christmas spirit. It was one of England's most famous queens who's really responsible for promoting this great Christmas tradition back in Victorian times. Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, came from Germany, and people in his country had been bringing trees indoors to decorate at Christmas time for many years. So naturally, when he came to live in England and Christmas arrived, he brought a fir tree into the royal palace and had it decorated as a present for his English wife, Queen Victoria, who was absolutely delighted. Pictures of the Queen and her family gathered around the Christmas tree appeared in the popular newspapers of the day, and pretty soon every house in the land decorated a fir tree at Christmas time. It's one of the nicest of all the traditions that we celebrate, and it's remained a firm Christmas favourite throughout the ages, spreading far and wide the whole world over. If our 8th day of Advent shows a Christmas tree, the 9th has to be the lights that'll decorate it. Today there are all kinds of electric lights on sale for Christmas trees, and very pretty they all look. But this tradition started a very long time ago, when the only way to light up anything was by means of a candle. More than 400 years ago, a very important priest walked out into a pine forest on Christmas Eve and looked up at the night sky filled with twinkling stars. It was so beautiful that he tried to recreate the scene by decorating fir trees with candles, much to the delight of his congregation. Putting candles on Christmas trees was quite a tricky business, and it was also quite dangerous as well, because if a candle fell, it could quickly set the tree alight. This became more of a problem in Victorian times, when people brought bigger and bigger Christmas trees into their houses, sometimes needing 100 candles or more to cover this most festive of decorations. It usually fell to the younger children of the family to take it in turns to fire watch at the side of the lighted Christmas tree, with a strategically placed bucket of water to hand, in case of emergency. Fortunately, there are no such dangers with modern Christmas lights, and we can get the full effect of twinkling stars amongst the pine needles without any of the old-fashioned hazards. It's sometimes a bit frustrating when you're waiting to put all the other decorations on the tree, and the grown-ups seem to take forever to get the lights going. But just imagine how much worse it would have been to get 100 or more candles to stay in place. At least once the dud bulbs have all been replaced, you can just switch on and see the Christmas scene illuminated. I don't know what would have been worse, lighting all the candles in the beginning, or blowing them all out when it was time to go to bed. So, with a fine Christmas tree and twinkling lights already in place, our 10th Advent picture has to be a glittering bauble, spinning and dancing from its green pine branch. A very long time ago, there was a kingdom called Bohemia, where people were famous for making beautiful objects out of glass. One day, quite close to Christmas, the men had been very busy, and this had made them extremely thirsty. With nothing but beer to hand, by the time they'd finished their work, they were all a bit drunk, and decided to have a competition to see who could blow the largest glass bubble. After the winner had enjoyed even more beer, the glass bubbles they'd made were left in the workshop until one of the wives spotted them. She thought that the pretty balls would make lovely decorations, so she took them to sell them at the Christmas market. The glass bubbles became very popular, and stories grew up around them. People called them spirit balls, because it was said that they could ward off evil spirits for the year ahead if they were hung in the entrance to your house. These balls were much too large to hang on the Christmas trees that more and more folk were putting up year by year. With an eye for a good new money-making idea, the glass blowers of Bohemia started to create smaller glass balls with paper-thin walls that were light enough to hang from tree branches, and they were exported all over the world. Today, a Christmas tree couldn't be considered properly decorated without brightly coloured baubles, but very few of them are made of glass anymore. If your grandparents have some very old Christmas baubles in their boxes of decorations, it's just possible that some may be glass. But as time goes by, it's less likely. Our modern plastic baubles do look very authentic, and are at least not quite as fragile as the glass variety, which had to be individually wrapped in tissue paper before they could be put away. The tree's now coming on very nicely, and for the 11th day of Advent, we've another beautiful decoration to adorn its branches. Tinsel comes in every colour you could possibly imagine, and you might think that this is a relatively modern addition to Christmas tree decorating. But like all the other stories we've been hearing in this programme, the idea of stringing brightly coloured garlands around the tree goes back a very long way. People from ancient times were very superstitious about trees, and every autumn when the leaves fell, they'd worry that they might never grow back again. This was because they believed that spirits lived in the trees, and when the leaves went, it was because the spirits had run away. To make sure that the spirits and the leaves came back again in the spring, strings of brightly painted stones and coloured cloth would be attached to the trees in the depths of winter. Of course, the leaves always returned, so the people thought that their tree dressing had worked, and over the centuries it became established as a custom. Although everyone soon found out that nature was responsible for the trees coming back to life, it didn't deter them from decorating trees in winter, and when they started to bring the Christmas tree indoors, they could use all sorts of decorations. Strings of paper flowers were very popular, and our modern-day tinsel certainly is a very attractive variation of the theme. It's the 12th day of Advent, and there's definitely something very important missing from our Christmas tree. There's nothing edible here, which we need to put right straight away. Look carefully at the tree, and you'll see some little gingerbread men hung on the branches. Christmas biscuits are very traditional in Germany, where the first Christmas trees came from. And in Sweden, lots of different types of biscuits are used for seasonal decorations. In this country, though, people are far more likely to have a tin of festive shortbread tucked under the tree to offer to their visitors. Although baking Christmas biscuits is a tradition that's now becoming more popular in Britain, perhaps our most favourite edible decorations to hang on the Christmas tree are of the chocolate variety. All kinds of foil-wrapped shapes will brighten up the proceedings, but sadly, by the time we get to Christmas Day, they'll probably have all been eaten. Children everywhere really enjoy all the sweets you can find at Christmas time, and old-fashioned favourites, like these red and white-striped bullseyes, can often be found tucked into Christmas stockings. You might think, as we get to picture 13 of this very unusual Advent calendar, that the Christmas tree decorations have been completed. Lights, baubles, tinsel, and goodies to eat, we've got them all. But what about the top of the tree? Which decoration is going to take pride of place? For some folk, it's always a Christmas angel that perches on the uppermost branch. But for others, the Christmas fairy is a far more popular choice. Yet in truth, both traditions actually stem from the same ancient custom, dating back hundreds of years. Again, we go to Germany, where a favourite early Christmas decoration was a little wax figure of the baby Jesus. These were hung all over the tree, and often a single larger version covered in gold was placed at the top. Over the centuries, this model of the Christ child sprouted wings and evolved into an angel. But the biggest change came with the Victorians, because he stopped being a boy and turned into a girl. The Victorian angels had lovely porcelain or wax faces, just like the dolls of the time that little girls loved to play with. And after Christmas, they'd be allowed to have the angel for a toy. Wings would be removed and pretty dresses added, and by the next Christmas, the angel was definitely female. Also, a new trend, Christmas pantomime was sweeping the country, and this always included a good fairy with a magic wand to make Christmas wishes come true. Everybody loved the good fairy, and she certainly graced many a fine Christmas tree. And to this day, people choose between the two options, even if on occasion it's quite hard to decide which is actually which. But for those who can't make up their minds whether to go for a fairy or an angel, there's always a Christmas star, like the one that shone over the Bethlehem stable where Jesus was born. It led the shepherds and wise men to bring gifts for the baby, so who knows? Perhaps a star would help direct Santa Claus to put presents under the Christmas tree for you. Our 14th Advent picture shows a very festive Christmas cracker. And a lot of people like to use these as decorations on their trees as well. But for most of us, Christmas crackers are usually associated with great festive meals to really get the party going with a bang. Crackers were invented by a Victorian gentleman who'd been on a visit to Paris. He saw sweets wrapped in brightly coloured papers, twisted at each end, that the French children called bonbons. This gave him a wonderful thought, and when he returned home, he made the first simple crackers that contained a sweet and a slip of paper with a motto or saying on it, an idea he'd got from Chinese fortune cookies. They were very popular, but the great inventor still wasn't absolutely satisfied. One night, when he was sat by the fire, a piece of wood cracked in the blaze, and he nearly jumped out of his skin. But he thought that if the crackers could go bang, just like the log had done, as they were pulled, it would be even more fun. As time went on, the sweets were replaced with little gifts, and the mottos became jokes and riddles. Another special addition was included. Tightly folded paper hats fell out of the pulled crackers, and everyone was able to wear a crown. Paper hats come from a tradition that's much older than the cracker, dating right back to Roman times. As part of the midwinter celebrations, masters and slaves would swap roles for a little while, and this custom was passed down through the ages. You might have heard people talking about Twelfth Night, which is the day when we take all the Christmas decorations down. But centuries ago, there would be huge parties held on this day. The tradition of master and slave swapping places continued at these gatherings as commoners were chosen to be kings and queens for the evening. They'd wear pretend crowns, and this is why the paper hats in crackers are shaped like crowns. Today, when we all pull our crackers and wear the paper hats, it's to make everyone feel like a king or a queen, if only for a day. Because we no longer have Twelfth Night celebrations, a lot of the customs have been transferred to Christmas itself, but we'll hear more about this a little later. Talking of wonderful Christmas meals, the 15th picture on this Advent calendar is very important indeed. What could be more festive than a steaming hot turkey carried to the table in all its golden glory? Turkey has been kept as a festive food, but it's not always been the centrepiece of the British Christmas dinner. For centuries, goose was served, and for the very rich, peacocks and even swans took centre stage on the Christmas table. In fact, it was Queen Victoria who first introduced turkey for the royal Christmas meal, because before this it had always been a swan. Her seal of approval was enough to make sure that turkey was the most popular bird for the great Christmas feast from Victorian times onwards. Our 16th Advent picture is also edible, but has been around at Christmas time for a lot longer than the turkey. The mince pie is very familiar to us all, but there's a lot more history to this simple little sweet pastry than you'd ever imagine. The very first mince pies were not sweet at all, but savoury, and they were called Christmas pies. All kinds of meat such as pork, beef and chicken were shredded together and mixed with fruit to be baked in the pie. There's a famous nursery rhyme about little Jack Horner who sat in the corner eating his Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum, and it was one of these very pies being described. But it wouldn't have been a round pie like we're used to seeing today. The Christmas pie was actually oblong-shaped to make it look like the manger that baby Jesus was cradled in, and usually a little baby figure was made out of pastry to decorate the top. This man is Oliver Cromwell, who hundreds of years ago was in charge of England, and he tried very hard to stop people celebrating Christmas. He thought it wasn't Christian to celebrate so wildly because he was very serious and religious. Cromwell and his followers thought that Christmas pies with baby Jesus on the top were very wicked indeed, and he actually had a law brought in that meant it was illegal to make or eat them. But ordinary folk didn't want to give up this much-loved tradition, so they just made a couple of alterations to get around the problem. Firstly, they changed the shape of the pie from rectangular to circular, and secondly, they called it a minced pie because of the minced meat it contained. Oliver Cromwell didn't stay in charge of England for very long, and soon everything, including Christmas, went back to how it had been before he came to power. But mince pies stayed around and never reverted to their old name. They also changed again during Victorian times as people stopped putting meat in them and just filled the pastry with sweet fruits and nuts. There are lots of legends about mince pies, and we still keep to the traditions to this very day. For example, you're allowed to make a wish when you take your first bite of your first mince pie at the beginning of Christmas. But you have to be careful not to refuse the first mince pie you're offered, because if you do, then you'll have bad luck for the coming year. Some people think that you'll have good luck if you eat a mince pie on each of the 12 days of Christmas. But for it really to work, you must eat each one in a different house. Of course, this might just be a good excuse for doing lots of Christmas visiting, particularly as folk usually offer a glass of sherry to wash down these modern versions of the traditional Christmas pie. If there's a lot of ancient customs surrounding mince pies, the 17th of December brings an even more traditional Christmas treat. A flaming Christmas pudding, decorated with a sprig of spiky holly, is a sight to behold at the end of the Christmas dinner. Not everyone likes this rich, fruity pudding, particularly the very young, but you don't have to eat it to appreciate that it's really quite spectacular. But the Christmas pudding's origins were not nearly so grand. It started life back in ancient Celtic times as a kind of porridge, bubbling constantly in honour of one of their gods. Everyone had to stir the great pot for the god to bless them all with a good harvest in the year ahead. Over the centuries, people made the porridge more exciting by adding meat and fruit to the mix. Eventually, it became more like the pudding we know today, especially when they stopped putting in meat. We still prepare Christmas pudding very carefully, mixing all the ingredients together some weeks before the big day. Stir-up Sunday was always set aside for the purpose, and every member of the family had a turn at stirring the Christmas pudding mix, just like the ancient Celts stirred their porridge such a long time ago, and it's a tradition that continues. But beware, you must always stir the pudding clockwise, making a wish as you go. To stir it anti-clockwise, or widdershins as the Old English word describes it, is very bad luck indeed. You might also find something you didn't expect in your Christmas pudding, because another tradition involves hiding objects in the mix. Find a coin and you'll have wealth for the year ahead. A ring and you'll meet the person that you're going to marry. But find a thimble and your lot will not be such a happy one, because you will remain unmarried and have to work much harder. Christmas cakes are made of very similar ingredients, but have a rather different history to the puddings. We've already talked a little bit about Twelfth Night, and the Christmas cake actually started out as a Twelfth Night cake. People would decide who was going to be king and queen of the festivities by cutting the cake in half and hiding a tiny bean in each portion. One half was given to the ladies and the other to the men, and if you found the bean in your slice of cake, you became the king or queen of the party and got to wear a paper crown. But these parties got very wild and boisterous, and Queen Victoria, who was quite a prim and proper lady, was definitely not amused, and she banned Twelfth Night celebrations altogether. Rather than lose this 12th night cake, which everybody really enjoyed, it was moved to Christmas to give us the cake we know and love today. A layer of yellow marzipan and snowy white icing completes the effect, and the addition of Santa Claus, reindeer, snowmen and Christmas trees make it all the more festive. It's really difficult to work out what this flaming 18th Advent picture actually is. And that's because it's a very old Christmas game called Snapdragon that isn't played anymore. And when you hear what's involved, you'll understand why. Once all the feasting on Christmas dinner was finished, and remember, there was no television to settle down in front of back then, games were very definitely the order of the rest of the day. The table was cleared, and the largest dish in the house was put in the middle and filled with dried fruit such as sultanas and raisins. Then, if it was still light, all the curtains would be drawn to darken the room, and the fruit was covered in brandy. Can you guess what happened next? The pile of fruit was set alight, and the flames brightened the whole place. Everybody would then have to take it in turns to snatch a handful of the flaming fruit and quickly eat it without burning their fingers or their mouths. It sounds very scary, but Snapdragon was extremely popular, and if you weren't brave enough to grab the fruit yourself, it was great fun to watch those that did jumping around with mouthfuls of hot fruit. Fortunately, not all of the old Christmas games were as dangerous as Snapdragon, and a lot of them have survived to the present day. Lots of families liked to play card games, and even now a Christmas get-together is still a good excuse for some friendly competition. Many games were better played with large numbers of people, so Christmas proved a perfect opportunity to indulge. Blind Man's Buff was always a favourite, with simple pleasures like Hunt the Thimble and musical chairs keeping adults and children entertained for many happy hours. These games are still played, but more often than not at children's birthday parties. But at Christmas now, board games seem to be more to people's taste. This is perhaps because we all live in much smaller places these days, and folk gathered around a table can be much easier to accommodate than hordes of excitable partygoers running all over the house. But if you do get a chance to play a noisy, boisterous, old-fashioned game, make the most of it. So long, of course, that it isn't Snapdragon. It's now the 19th day of December, and Christmas is getting very, very close. Our picture is of everyone's most favourite person this time of the year. You don't need anyone to tell you that this is Santa Claus, taking a well-earned few minutes rest at this very busy time of the year. All the letters asking for all sorts of presents have arrived from boys and girls all over the world, and he's not got long to collect all the goodies together. He can't run out of things now, can he? And of course everything needs to be wrapped up in brightly coloured paper with the right name tag attached. So many names to remember, and he's got to get all the spellings right. Have a good look around, and who knows what you might find. think Santa's just about ready for Christmas Eve. It looks like he's just got a few last-minute things to finish, and then it'll be time to get started on his amazing journey. And as the 20th day of Advent dawns, the picture we see is a present, beautifully decorated and ready for Christmas morning. But have you ever wondered why we have presents at Christmas time? It's a tradition that goes back a lot further than even Santa Claus. We've talked a little bit already about how Christmas was a midwinter festival at a time when food was very precious, so exchanging gifts of the edible variety was very much appreciated. Each farmer specialised in different things, so swapping what had been produced was a lovely way to celebrate, and the exchange of gifts at Christmas time has carried on this wonderful seasonal custom ever since. You might have wondered why the day after Christmas is called Boxing Day, and this is all to do with presents as well. Long, long ago, when ships used to set out to sea, not knowing whether they would fall off the edge of the world or not, a priest would bless a small box and place it on board. The sailors, when they got afraid, would say a prayer and drop coins and trinkets into the box. If they returned safely, they would give the box back to the priest, who kept it in the church until Christmas Day, when it was opened. Next morning, the money was distributed to the poor, and very soon this became known as Boxing Day. Being generous to poor people is a tradition that continues to be associated with Christmas, even though Christmas boxes are now a thing of the past. Boxing Day is still a very good time to think of others after having lots of lovely presents on Christmas morning. Christmas is almost here. It's the 21st of December, and our journey is now taking us further northwards because everyone knows that you need to go to Lapland if you want to find Santa Claus. This beautiful snow scene is deep in the Arctic Circle, and people really do dream of a white Christmas here. But in England, it's highly unlikely that there'll be snow on Christmas Day. In the whole of the 1900s, there were only 2 white Christmases recorded in London. So why does everybody always think of snow when they think of Christmas? There was a great English writer called Charles Dickens who lived during Queen Victoria's reign. His books were very famous indeed, and the one you've most probably heard of is called A Christmas Carol. Whenever Charles Dickens wrote about Christmas, he always made it snowy. And because his books were so beautifully written, that's how people always imagined it to be. There's a very good reason why Charles Dickens did this. He was born in 1812, and for the first 8 years of his life, it snowed every Christmas. So when he grew up, each time he wrote about Christmas, he thought of his snowy childhood memories. even today, his Christmas stories are still read at this very special time of the year. And should you never get to see snow at Christmas time, Charles Dickens's wonderful books will be able to help you to enjoy the experience. Ebenezer Scrooge was a mean old miser who thought that Christmas was nothing but humbug. "If I could work my will," said Scrooge indignantly, "every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart, he should." This is not a good start to the Christmas festivities, particularly for Scrooge's poor clerk, Bob Cratchit, who has a wife and family he would like to be with on Christmas Day. He also has a crippled son, Tiny Tim, who is very ill and might not live to see another Christmas. When Scrooge is alone in his bed, he's visited by the ghost of his dead business partner, Jacob Marley, who is wrapped in chains, weighed down with his burdens. The chain he drew was clasped around his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. Marley had come to warn Scrooge that if he didn't change his ways, he would end up in the same predicament. 3 spirits then visit Scrooge, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, who show him what he must do to save himself and others around him. The first spirit appeared like a child, dressed in white, carrying fresh green holly. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish stature. "No, your past." The ghost takes Scrooge back to when he was a boy and reminds him of how he lost out on love. "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost, "that they are what they are. Do not blame me." "Remove me!" Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it." The second ghost is the spirit of Christmas present, who takes Scrooge to see Christmas at Bob Cratchit's house, where Tiny Tim is failing fast. He sat very close to his father's side, upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child, and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge, with an interest he had never felt before, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat," replied the ghost, "in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "No, no," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, kind spirit, say he'll be spared." A definite change of heart for Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, and by the time the ghost of Christmas yet to come arrived to take Scrooge to see his own grave, the old miser is resolved to change his ways. He immediately sets out to make amends to all, and especially to his faithful servant Bob Cratchit, hoping against hope that he will be in time to save Tiny Tim. "A Merry Christmas, Bob!" said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, every one.
Our next Advent picture for the 22nd of December is a husky dog that's well used to such Arctic conditions. It's quite hard to travel around in this deep snow, and a team of husky dogs pulling a sledge is a very good way to get to where you have to go. We do think about animals quite a lot at Christmas time, perhaps because so many of them were in the stable where baby Jesus was born. With this very special connection to the Nativity, some people believe that on Christmas Eve the animals can speak, and others have reported seeing cattle and donkeys bowing down in their fields as the clock strikes midnight. But whether such things really did happen, or the stories have been exaggerated as they've been handed down through history, nobody can say. The only thing we do know for certain is the fact that families with pets like to give special treats to their animals at Christmas time, and it's a very traditional custom that's been going on for centuries. The excitement is now almost unbearable. It's the 23rd of December, and this next Advent picture really makes everyone think that Santa is on his way. Here in Lapland, you'll see plenty of reindeer. And we all know who travels around the world on Christmas Eve in a sleigh pulled by magical flying reindeer. All sorts of stories and poems have been written about Father Christmas and his reindeer, so you'd better look out to see if any of these reindeer have particularly red noses. We don't get a chance to see real reindeer very often, so take a closer look at these wonderful animals in their natural environment. If you prefer, you can try and stay awake on Christmas Eve to watch out for Santa and his reindeer flying through the night sky. But they're very fast indeed. One sleepy blink and you'd probably miss them. And so at last we come to December the 24th, Christmas Eve itself. For children everywhere, the prospect of waking to find a pile of presents left by Santa Claus is just too exciting. But the preparations are not quite complete. We've talked about mince pies already, and we must make sure that the visitors haven't eaten them all, because there must be one remaining to leave out for Santa. He's had a very busy night, travelling from place to place, and a glass of sherry and a mince pie makes the perfect snack wherever he stops. And don't forget the reindeer, whatever you do. They're not so fond of mince pies, and certainly can't have any sherry with all the driving that they've got to do. A few carrots should do the trick, and some people say that a saucer of milk goes down a treat. But you might have your own ideas about what to leave out for Father Christmas when he comes to visit, because nobody knows for sure what the jolly old chap and his reindeer really like, and all those mince pies and carrots might just get a little bit boring. The next thing that you must decide upon is what to put out at the foot of your bed for Santa Claus to put your presents into. Stockings are very popular, and these days you can get lovely brightly coloured ones that are nice and stretchy, perfect for all those awkward shaped gifts. But there are even bigger options that you can try. A lot of families will hang up pillowcases or even sacks. This one has a lovely picture of St. Nicholas on it, so there's no mistaking what it's for, and hopefully it'll make Santa Claus feel very welcome indeed. We can't promise that you'll get more presents if you hang out a pillowcase or a sack rather than a stocking, because Father Christmas is a pretty smart fellow, and he's got everyone's gifts all worked out before he even leaves his snowy Lapland home. And so to bed, on Christmas Eve. Everything is done, and all you can do is close your eyes, fall asleep, and dream of Christmas morning. But when we started this very special Advent journey, we promised you magic and mystery, and we haven't quite finished yet. How many of us, young and old alike, drift off into peaceful Christmas slumbers, wishing they could travel to Lapland and see Santa Claus? Well, now's your chance. Have a very happy Christmas, and whatever you do, remember to hold on tight.
Oli, mene! Vetto! Oli, bene!